Well, welcome to the Real Alaska Podcast. I'm the host, Justin, and my lucky sidekick here.
Billy, nice to meet you guys.
Good to see you.
And we are here with the Anchorage Economic Development Corporation with
Bill Popp.
and,
Jenna Wright.
well, yeah, thanks for coming on the show and making time out here. I know you guys are super busy, and so welcome.
Well, thank you. We're really happy to be here.
Yeah. I mean, just obviously starting off, like a brief kind of intro, what you guys do, who you are. Like, are you from Alaska? Or did you migrate here?
Jenna, why don't you lead off?
Sure. So I was born and raised here in Anchorage.
Okay.
I grew up in South Anchorage. My mom homeschooled me up until about middle school, and then I went to Mears and Diamond, and then after that I went to UAA for my undergraduate degrees. I've traveled pretty much all over the world. I've done 20 countries, half the U.S. states, but coming home to Alaska is always where I want to be, and I know I'm in the right space. I'm a big mountain runner. I like to mountain bike and really just general outdoor enthusiast.
Yeah. 20 countries.
Yes.
I need to get on your level. Bill, how about you?
Military brat, came up in 1968, and we fell in love with Alaska back then in the day. And the military stuck us in Victorville, California for 2 years, but we couldn't come back fast enough after that. And been here ever since. Lived here, grew up here in Anchorage, East High, class of 77. Yes, now people can do the math.
Yeah.
Met my wife in high school, and we got married a year after she graduated, and we have 2 kids one of whom has generously given us 2 grandchildren and who happen to live here in Anchorage, which makes us very, very happy. We've lived continuously in Alaska. We lived in Kenai for 25 years, starting in the early 80s. And then Anchorage Economic Development Corporation knocked on my door and said, come work for us. And I've been at this. It'll be 16 years in April.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Man, I'm like, you guys have your hands in literally so much here in Anchorage. It's
a lot of balls in the air.
Yeah, seriously. How do you guys manage all of this stuff? Like all the luncheons and speaking and
we're currently doing it with a gigantic staff of 4, counting myself, and we're our plans for global domination continue. We are very focused on turning Anchorage in the direction that it needs to turn. To start to deal with the recent multiple-year downtrend that we've been dealing with. We got a lot going on. We're focused quite a bit on quality of place and getting Anchorage's pitch to outside workers improved significantly on a number of fronts, and then also assisting local businesses and assisting startups in terms of helping them to find their way into the startup networks and just basically assisting businesses that are looking to make investments in Anchorage also. So we're kind of a jack of all trades economic development organization.
When I think about kind of leaders and pioneers of Anchorage who kind of have like their hand in everything, no one else really does what you guys do.
I don't think so. We are kind of a rare bird in Alaska. Most economic development-oriented organizations tend to be advocacy organizations focused on politics and policy. We are a more of the kind of bread-and-butter economic development professional team that's focused on assisting businesses at a much higher level of detail with business intelligence, assistance with issues that they're dealing with, helping them to network more appropriately, identifying opportunities to assist them, whether it's incentives at the state, local, or federal level, or tracking down, just helping to overcome challenges. That's more often as not what we're trying to do. We're trying to help them to overcome, the unique challenges that Anchorage and Alaska offers any number of businesses from outside of the state.
Correct.
That are just not used to some of the things that we do that haven't been done in decades in the lower 48. And
yes,
it's it's a little bit of a maturity level. Plus, it's a small population state. And basically, everybody knows your business. No matter what, it's I like to tell businesses that are coming into Anchorage that it's the biggest small town they've ever done business in.
Yep.
it's a couple of degrees off angle from what they're used to in any number of other communities and states across the U.S., Canada, and elsewhere in the world.
I've been doing business now. I mean, from my career of public safety, moving into business, which is two completely separate fields.
A little bit.
It's Alaska, and especially Anchorage, is very relationship based still. It's kind of like how business used to be done. I'm sure in the lower 48 many moons ago. Now it's very online, and but Alaska's still like the very relationship, who making connections, like so.
It's still the West,
It's still it's still very much the last frontier. So
A little bit.
and we're still very far behind on quite a few things.
Yeah.
So.
We're amazingly ahead in some ways, though. It's just kind of interesting, to see how some things work here and how they otherwise might not work the way that people expect them to.
Yeah.
And it's been a learning experience for me in the decades that I've been doing this.
Yeah.
And I continue to be surprised practically every day by something.
I got involved in the startup world here this last fall, and I was actually just amazed at the technology and just what is coming out of some of the younger generations as far as like creativity and these new ventures and tech and all this stuff. I was like, this came out of Alaska? Like, no way.
It is really impressive. We have some real geniuses, I would say, in the entrepreneur space that are coming up with really, really cool things. And they say if you can do it in Alaska, you can do it anywhere, right? Because of all of our unique challenges that we have.
True. Yeah, it was cool to kind of see some of the stuff coming out from like Juneau and the Bush communities, and just trying to work through. Obviously, with any business, you're trying to solve a problem, right? And so, just trying to solve problems in their communities that their communities face. Whether it's like energy or food scarcity or whatever else. And so it's
Wi-Fi. All kinds.
all kinds of stuff. It was cool to kind of like, listen to some pitches and all this kind of jazz. And so. Yeah. Now, as far as we all know that Alaska has some of its downfalls, right? And over the last 10 years, we've had a decline of the working population. What do you see as what do you two see as like a kind of like that bright star of trying to get people back up here?
I'd say it first and foremost comes down to attitude and the attitude shift that we're having to go through. For decades, basically our pitch was, look, there's the mountains. That's the only reason you need to live here.
Right.
It's a privilege. Yeah, well, it's a privilege to live in Alaska.
Right.
You're right, though.
But the problem is that we lose sight of the fact that I can go to Colorado and point to the mountains and say, see, that's the only reason you need to live here. Or I can do the same thing in Montana, or I can do the same thing, even, God help me, in California, which is where the most significant number of Alaskans leaving the state are moving to.
That's
Really?
surprising,
California is the number one destination in an average
surprised
year.
by that.
The only year that it lost that vaunted number one position was in 2020 during the COVID year, and then Washington State picked that up.
I'd be curious to know if that's like job specific, right? It's like a specific skill, like an IT or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, because that would make more sense to me. Because
I think it's broad-based. I think it's a small faction of retaires.
Sure.
I think it even with the taxing environment that they have, there's still small towns in California that really appeal to certain people, especially when they're chasing sun or they're moving near family.
that makes sense.
But I think also you've got a lot of working age adults who are moving there for quality of life issues.
Sure.
Schools are an incredible
That's a big
magnet
one.
right
Yep.
now for working age adults with kids. And if you don't have good schools, you are at an immediate disadvantage in the world of economic development in terms of attracting investment, because investment is pursuing an available, growing, stable pool of workers. The worst thing in the world you can do is to make an investment somewhere and then have to import all the labor
Yes.
or the majority of the labor.
That was my argument for UAA, right? It was like, why would we? Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of ground to tread there that, we
Yeah,
can spend all
that's
day on, but we're a small population state. We are in decline, and I will use that word with very great intent. We are currently in decline. We do not have the ability to take advantage of the many opportunities that have landed in our lap since COVID. And that is most unfortunate. I mean, we could be adding several thousand more jobs this year if we just had the labor force available and the ability to attract it. Right. And right now, we're just not seeing those net migration numbers working in our favor. It's net out migration still.
And and I get part of that, and you nailed part of that, which was just people are looking for schools, safe communities. Walkability,
mixed use, the ability to walk down to your local coffee shop and not have to drive everywhere you need to go to, that you want to go or need to go.
Yeah.
We've kind of did ourselves a disservice when we got into this idea that all we had to do was build our city around cars. And part of that was the sprawl, what we refer to in my office as the sins of the 70s and the sins of the 80s, when we had the oil boom in the 70s, and it was throw it up as fast as you can because we've got 50,000 more people here than we had just 5 years ago.
Right.
And housing was a real challenge. And then in the 80s, it was a state treasury that went from $775 million in general fund revenues in 1975 to $3.1 billion in 1980. What could go wrong with that? And we just went on a spending spree, and it hyperinflated the marketplace.
Alaska went new money.
1985, just to give you an example, 1985, we built 10,000 units of housing in Anchorage.
Jesus.
In 1 year.
That's insane.
Over 20,000 people in construction in that year.
Yeah.
I think this last year we'll probably net out somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 300 to 400 new units of housing.
Yeah.
And we've got somewhere right around 7,000 people in the construction trades in Anchorage. And so we sprawled because we didn't want to, zoning was sort of optional and building codes were advisory and, and things like that. And so now we've got this city that by rights for 290,000 people-ish, 288,000, we are covering a land area that by rights should have 500,000 people in an average U.S. city. And it's
I feel like that's marketable, right? Like you could get clean water, you could still find food.
There's that. There's that. We have advantages. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not saying we're completely at a total disadvantage.
No, I don't think so.
It's just that there's this national campaign, or what we call the talent wars, going on between cities across the United States, and we're way behind the curve on that. We tried to get that going with the Live, Work, Play initiative back in 2010. And we worked on that for years and years, and it just was the average answer that I got, it's just a cycle, Bill. It'll turn around. Don't worry about it. It'll all take care of itself. It always does. And it doesn't. Now that we've got this demographic, downturn that is decades long in front of us, where we're going to see fewer and fewer working age adults in America unless we change our immigration policies. And those are going to be the kind of challenges that we're going to be, at a disadvantage in Alaska, given our higher cost of living, unless we start doing things that make it just so amazingly unique to be here and yet meet basic expectations of a younger generation of workforce coming up that isn't so much into stuff and giant houses and large yards, and they're more about the accumulation of experiences and having a good base camp to work from.
Yeah, it's quality of life.
Yeah. It is plain and simple.
We're finding it, in the real estate world, we're seeing more of the young couples who want just a place to put their head at night, have a dog, have some kids, have a good school, have a good neighborhood, walk to stuff, bike to stuff.
Yep.
They don't want the big house. They don't want the heating bill and cleaning and everything associated
and
with
the
a large
upkeep
house.
And all the work you got to put into a large place like that.
They're my wife and I have been downsizing for the last 4 years. So, it's
the minimalist movement is really taking off, and people are wanting less space and just the necessities that make them happy.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a trend of, I don't know when this happened, maybe sometime in the last 5 years, but the trailheads have way more people on them than they've ever had.
They do.
Right. And we're not increasing in population, right? We're decreasing. So it's so there's that movement too, right? So people are spending less time at home. I don't know if it was COVID or what it was that stemmed that, but people are getting outside.
I think during COVID, it was one of the safe activities that you could do. Get outside of the house and go get exercise and sunshine without being worried about getting sick if you go into a crowded indoor space.
Right, and we're seeing those impacts, especially in Eagle River and all these trailheads that are really accessible to us. Because not everybody that goes is responsible. The education component's not there.
Right.
You know,
Leave no trace.
yeah, the leave no trace, that's not a thing anymore, you know, unfortunately. So there's a lot of pressure on those areas too, just because of that. But it's interesting because it correlates, I think. You know, it's like one of my clients specifically was a cash buyer. They're looking for a house. He's a lawyer in town. They do really well for themselves, you know, but they're a younger generation of folks. You know, they're kind of the tech deal and all that. And but they're minimalists, right? Very much so. And then they would rather have cash to do, you know, have toys and invest in their community and do other things like that. You know, they're thinking smaller. So it's just an interesting change.
Well, it's a interesting convergence of the baby boom generation with Gen Z and the younger millennials, because the baby boom generation, now that, you know, richest generation in human history. I mean, right now, somewhere in the neighborhood of $67 trillion worth of household net worth in the United States, which totals out somewhere closer to 120 trillion, is owned by the baby boom generation. And there's 41 million baby boomers left in working age, in the working age demographic. But by 2030, they're all going to be 65 or older. And they are also, you know, we, the boomer generation, want to retire early for the most part. You know, the sweet spot is 62, 63 for boomers. And so now we've seen the population of Anchorage shift. In 2010, 19% of our population was 55 or older. Today, 25%. 1 out of 4 of Anchorage citizens are 55 or older, and that's just going to grow exponentially over the next 5 to 7 years. But the boomers are now starting to downsize. They're trying to get out of the big place that anchors them, you know, with the big yard
The rat race.
and you know, all the things that go into maintaining a big house. And they're trying to find ways to downsize and to get rid of stuff so that they can pick up and go whenever they want. They can go travel the world and beat Jenna's number and get up to 25 or 30 countries that they visited. And there we go. And they're out on the trailheads. They're wanting to get outside more. They're trying to be physically active. They want to live to 100. And they actually have reasonable odds of that for the first time in human history that a generation can think that way. And then also they want to be able to, at the drop of the hat, go visit the grandkids wherever they are.
Right.
And I'll tell you, that is a powerful, powerful influence on boomers. Thank God my grandchildren live here in Anchorage. Otherwise, I'd be spending a small fortune on flying my wife wherever they might be, because she would be there to help them get ready for school if she had her way during the week, and then come home on the weekends if they were out of state. So, you know, it's amazing because this downsizing and this minimalist attitude and mindset it's just this kind of crossing of the lines between the younger generations who've adopted that early as opposed to the boomer generation, which was all about, you know, affluence and collection of stuff. And what was the old adage? He who dies with the most toys wins, you know, which was just, you know, it's starting to change. And unfortunately, Anchorage has not caught up with these trends. And I'm starting to hear more leaders in the real estate and developer community starting to recognize that vertical is going to be our primary option in the not too distant future in terms of development.
We were just talking about this.
Yeah, you know, multi-story apartments. You know, I've been to cities across the U.S. looking at how other cities have been successful. Probably the one that stands out to the most to me is this small town outside of Indianapolis called Carmel, Indiana. Little sleepy town, about 25 years ago. Mayor ran for, you know, this local real estate guy decided that he didn't like the direction his town was going. It was just basically aging out and fading away.
Yeah.
He went in, he got elected, and the next thing you know, he put in a design district. And everybody's going, what the hell's a design district?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then that led to a renovation of their main street. And now they've got all of these 4 to 6 story apartment complexes with indoor or underground parking. Yeah. No flat parking lots. None. None whatsoever.
I like that. It's good use. You could put green space where that was.
Street parking, yeah, that's exactly what they did. So then they got a hold of an old abandoned rail line that bisected the town that ran for miles, got the railroad to donate it to them. They went and stripped out all the tracks, turned it into this 20-foot wide multi-purpose trail that bisected the town.
That's
Then they built a new midtown on either side of it with 6-story apartment buildings and park spaces. Now they've got this anchor in with this, huge garden space, theaters, hotels, and now they have 5 Fortune 500 company headquarters in their town. The base population has doubled to nearly 90,000, and during the day, when people come in to commute from outside of their community, they've got almost 125,000 people in their town.
Jeez.
And they have, and I love how they adapt to this, because other towns would be dying in this
Right.
circumstance because it would have blown up their streets and roads. No. This mayor decides we're going to put in more roundabouts than anybody else in the United States. They now have over 110 roundabouts in their little town.
I bet firemen love that. They reduce fatalities and crashes.
It reduces fatalities, crashes, and he's very proud about the fact that it reduces their carbon footprint based on no vehicles idling.
Sure does.
Yeah.
And
smart
so,
point.
and it's just that kind of innovative thinking that we've just got to start adapting to here in Anchorage to start to really turn the corner.
We like to redo roundabouts.
Yeah. well, I have to admit that the ones that they're redoing, boy, they had some problems.
They did, yeah.
The turning radius was a little tight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were our first one. So
Yes.
trial and error found,
Yes.
redo.
There we go.
I'm with you though. I think that the Anchorage that I envision and some of the needs that I've seen called for, and I'm working in real estate and then going to see people like you guys talk and going to all these things, and we try to go. And so I'm putting all this stuff together, and I'm thinking maybe the future looks like 4 to 6 story vertical construction with underground parking, right? It's Alaska. People pay premium for that, right? So how nice would it be if that was a common amenity, right? People are not idle in their cars because they're parking underground and doing all that stuff. So just with that approach, right? And then we can replace that parking with green space,
Right.
right? And if you can back it up to green space and you have trails and access and all these things, you're gonna bring in people who are now gonna need services, right? So that area, wherever that is gonna develop out. Businesses are gonna wanna come to those areas because their customers are there, right? And so you start to see all this stuff pile up on itself. And so some of the areas that we have in Anchorage will really benefit from that.
I mean, like, how many flat parking lots are in downtown?
Yeah.
We actually
Is that best use for the space?
Like,
Probably not, right?
I mean, it's ridiculous.
We actually have more flat, undeveloped ground other than, I don't call a parking lot developed. That's just
No.
a temporary use.
It's just asphalt.
We've got more flat, undeveloped ground in downtown Anchorage today than we had in the 1980s. We have actually demolished a lot of buildings in downtown and not replaced them with anything other than a parking lot.
Yeah, which is sad.
It is, because
So-
it's also a waste of resource and opportunity. Downtown real estate will generate more tax revenue per square foot than any other part of Anchorage on an order of magnitude that just, you don't come even close to it as far as what downtown generates. The more development we get into downtown, and you don't spend all those dollars in downtown, it actually gives more resources to the rest of the community when you've got a strong and vibrant downtown with a large resident population. Right now, we've got less than 1,000 people living in the downtown core. And that's just crazy talk. We should be having at least 5, 6, 10,000 people living in downtown.
Yeah, I live in downtown, so I'm one of the 1,000.
It's great.
But I mean, I'm just with what I love about being downtown is just proximity to dining, shopping,
Amenities.
performing arts,
Walkability.
right? But you see all this empty space, and it's untouchable.
To put it in perspective, AEDC brought up a destination development expert in the fall, and then, I guess he came in the winter and then also in the summer. And during the summer, he was staying at the Captain Cook, and he took a photo of the downtown landscape. And this guy has visited hundreds of U.S. cities, several countries, and he said that our downtown had the most flat parking space that he had ever seen in any of his other travels. So just to put it in perspective, we definitely have an opportunity for development there.
Yeah, I was talking with some developers who were like, hey, how do I get into downtown? How do we develop some of this stuff up? And it's like, it's owned by the Mental Health Trust, it's owned by the Heritage Land Bank, or people who just have no desire to ever sell it. And I'm like, well, how do we
do that?
And those, the first two are places that just don't ever really give away a lot of land, or sell it often. So it's like, how do we make that developable? You know what I mean? How do we kind of change that attitude of taking raw land or just flat parking lots.
And then there's
turn it
limitations
into
too to residential,
buildings.
right? So like downtown, there's really not a lot of residential stuff,
No, just South Addition. You do have the spot for Christensen.
right?
Well, we've got the new
kinda-
apartment complex going up over on 9th Avenue, next to the just a block away from the Department of Health and Social
Yep,
Services.
Yep, super close.
And that's going to add a few dozen apartments, which is great. Mr. Debenham is doing some great work there, and that was a city partnership. There's another project that's under development, the Block D development that Anchorage Community Development Authority is working to move forward, and it's in the scoping phase right now in terms of what kind of outcomes do we want to have in terms of developing this property. But I believe that their focus is on downtown housing, right across the connected to the park strip. And then we've got other developments that are going to potentially take place. The Block 41 development, which is the Key Bank building, is anchoring that development. There's a lot of demolition going on right now as they prep the site for the construction. But they've still got some variations in the plan that haven't been finalized yet. But there are condos potentially in that development. And then we've got other little infills that we're seeing where buildings are being remodeled and a couple of apartments are being stuck on the top. And so we got some some signs of life, some green shoots. I'm aware of a couple of other projects that could be adding a couple of dozen apartments as part of a larger development. We'll hopefully see some good news later this year that will add to a little bit of enthusiasm for the fact that downtown is starting to. I think we're at the beginning edge of a renaissance for downtown. It's just a matter of it's still in that kind of toddler stage.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that it gets the ability to run.
Right.
So,
We're crawling before we.
Yeah.
before
Well,
we
I think
start
we're up on our
walking.
feet. We're just
Can't
kind of a
walk in
little
before
wobbly.
running.
Yeah.
No, it's that Key Bank building's been cool to see. That's that's going to be a beautiful building. So
Spectacular.
It
Great
already
addition.
is.
yeah, every time I drive by it multiple times a day, so I'm like, man, this thing's awesome.
I know, it's
So-
exciting.
Yeah.
And they're developing that entire block. So, like Bill said, that's just the anchor project. So it'll be
Yeah.
really exciting to see what the final product looks like in the coming years.
And the Aviator Hotel is moving forward. That's going to be up and running and renting rooms by hopefully June, if everything goes right there. And
Yeah,
then
that was
that'll-
Beckett, right? Who was
Yes.
kind of forefronting that project.
Yeah, he put together the investment group on that one. He's got some other projects downtown that he's working on that are not quite at a point where they can be talked about yet, but very excited about what those may turn into. And there's just I think that there's opportunities starting to be recognized. I think the city is finally becoming a little more flexible in its ability to be a partner in these developments as
Right.
opposed to a grudging supporter, which is the way the old systems used to work.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of forward-thinking attitude. We just have to start getting our head around what is it that we want as an outcome.
Right.
And then if we get that clear in our heads, it can be real simple. It can be we want 5,000 people living in downtown. Okay, now reverse engineer that. What's it going to take to get 5,000 people living in downtown? What kind of amenities? What kind of development do we want that would be attractive to the demographic that is coming up? That are sooner or later going to pry the death grip that the baby boom generation has on the steering wheel off of the steering wheel, and will start to take control of the future of the city. And that's where I get excited because I think that's where change starts to happen.
Right.
And we're definitely seeing it. You can see like the spark in downtown, which is really cool to see, especially because
I've had some strong theories about what that would look like and develop over the
yeah.
future, and it's coming true. I feel less like a conspiracy theorist. So.
It's coming
But
to
it's-
fruition.
Yeah, because I was right, and I was like, okay, that's a good opportunity. Like all this stuff's going to develop out.
Like the 4th Avenue Theater, talk about, just this point of contention amongst people who just didn't want to see that symbol go away.
Right, I could see that.
But yet, okay, guys, this has been put up to the voters for funding, multiple, different investors have bought and sold this thing. It's time, I was kind of.
change doesn't
glad
have
see
to
it
have
kind of
a
change,
negative
but-
connotation, though,
No.
right? Like it's a shifting to a new.
Yeah.
Yeah, but change is hard.
Change is
You're
hard.
right. It's the hardest
Change is
thing.
hard,
we're
especially
constantly
for
doing-
folks who've grown up here and invested decades of their life
Sure.
Yeah.
in the community, and there are certain things that are very cherished memories. I mean, I've been to movies in the Fourth Avenue Theater.
Yeah.
I've been to to shows. I mean, it's it was an amazing piece of architecture, but in the same hand, I think that the essence of that theater had to do with the murals and the ceiling and some of the other aspects of the interior. And everything that I understand is that the developers of the block are going to be incorporating those assets as well as rebuilding the historic storefront on 4th Avenue in modern design methods and materials.
Right.
So that it will hold up much better over time than the old facade was holding up, which was basically it was crumbling away. It was becoming very friable, if you will.
Right.
And I truly do think that if we can get past this change is hard mindset and start to embrace the fact that we can build the new the new landmarks in our community that will go for far longer than what was previously a somewhat disposable style of construction and development that took place in our community.
Yeah, I mean, I travel quite a bit, and you'll see this through communities. They'll take old buildings, they'll keep like the shell of the old building, and then just, demo everything inside, scale it up, but the entire original facade is still there, so it maintains that kind of old and historic look, and then all your new stuff is a little bit more blended modern.
Texas does a lot of that, and then I see that a lot in Boise too. Boise did a good job with that
Yeah.
because they have kind of like the historic city.
They do. I think Anchorage is going to probably need some more of that, but we're also kind of a young city, so the problem
have as much to
we don't have as
develop.
much historic stuff, and so some of our older buildings are just not really.
The environment of Alaska is hard on certain kinds of construction techniques, and unfortunately, it was particularly hard on most of the buildings.
Right.
A certain earthquake in 1964 took out quite a bit of the landmarks that were in downtown Anchorage at that time.
Yeah, and it's because I have this conversation with people like just because it's old doesn't mean it's like we need to save it.
There is that. There is that.
Sometimes it's just I'm like, unless you're spending your money, sometimes it's just cost prohibitive to do what you can with that building. It's just
Right.
I mean, it's
tear it down.
It's lived its life.
Yeah,
It's like all
it's just,
depreciated out.
Let's tear it down. Let's start over. That's going to be might be the cheaper option. As much as people don't want that.
And maybe in a couple of generations, the things that we build today will be cherished landmarks that have the value and have the durability that can become that new historic features of Anchorage.
Right.
Exactly, and our history is so young that it's not lost. It's
Right.
like that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
We remember it.
So I guess moving forward, obviously we've got some bright future in downtown. I guess the question is, how do we get the working class back to Anchorage, or even keep them in Anchorage? Like those are.
You want to start that one off, Jenna?
Sure. I mean, it comes down to creating a place where working age adults want to either stay, like you said. Right now, we're losing about 1 in 3 of our youth that are moving out of state, and they're not coming back. So our first charge needs to be to retain the talent that we do have within our state, and then we need to be able to attract. We are in this national talent war right now. Anchorage and Alaska are not the only ones struggling with a worker or labor force shortage. So what can we do to create a place that is attractive when we are on that competition at a national level? So one of the things that AEDC is doing is encompassing the Choose Anchorage plan, and I think this is a good time now to introduce that. We spent the better part of last year researching the Anchorage economy from an industry and workforce cluster analysis perspective. And the researchers uncovered this issue of net outmigration for the last 10 years, that it's becoming more and more known throughout the community. But they also identified things that we could do to turn that trajectory around. So the plan focuses on business vitality, talent, quality of place, and infrastructure. So from a business vitality perspective, how are our businesses doing? What can we do to retain the businesses that we do have, help them grow, and then also attract investment from outside of the state back into Anchorage? Talent, just like I talked about, we need to be able to set up a pathway where young people see a light at the end of the tunnel and they see a future for themselves here in Anchorage. And that can be any number of things. We have a great university system, we have technical programs, but we need to make sure that we're connecting the young people with those different things.
Right.
Quality of place. We've been talking about that earlier in the podcast, making the downtown somewhere that is enjoyable to be, making it so there's access to go take advantage of our amazing recreational assets that we have throughout the Chugach. And then infrastructure, of course, is definitely a foundation of any thriving city, right? We have to have strong roads, bridges, airport, port, and we have the fourth largest cargo airport in the world here in Anchorage, which is an incredible asset, and we have room to expand on that. So the Choose Anchorage plan has 19 kind of broad action items that are centered around those 4 pillars that we can use to really turn this trajectory around, keep our young folks, and then attract others as well to help grow our economy.
Yeah, I think, what are you guys seeing as far as like stakeholders that need to buy in to the Choose Anchorage to kind of help facilitate and make that happen? Like university, like the whole UA system, right?
Because they were asking for a physical therapy program, right?
I'm not sure.
Something UAA. I was trying to go back mentally to the presentation, like kind of thinking what the different people were asking for, and like that was one of the things, right? They wanted to put some of the different medical programs in at UAA that we need in the area. That would make sense, right?
Yeah.
So that way we're not shipping out to get those people trained that then never come back because.
That's an aspect of it, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we're really fortunate to have gotten really, really a warm reception to this plan. There's really no opposition that I think we've heard of. Everybody is incredibly supportive of it. They understand that it needs to be done, and it's the right time to do it. So I think we're really fortunate to get that kind of support. It's comprehensive, though. So it's not like any one organization, for instance, AEDC, is going to be able to accomplish it on our own. What we're doing right now is going out in the community and trying to gather different stakeholders, like you mentioned, that have specialties or disciplines within a certain pillar of the plan and organizing them around those actions and then doing the same thing within another pillar. So
Nice.
That's what we're working on right now.
Yeah.
And like I said, everyone's really excited about it. They're jazzed up. They know it's the time to make it happen.
I'd offer that I've been at this for 16 years at AEDC, and it has been challenging. This has definitely been, pushing a very large boulder up the mountainside and trying to get the community behind it. And I think this is the most optimistic that I've been in a very long time about our ability as a community to start to recognize that we have to change the way we think and are doing things because the world is changing around us, and what used to be the foundation that we stood on in our thinking and in what our experience taught us is now eroding beneath our feet.
Right.
And we have to build a new foundation to stand on. And that foundation is going to have to be 100% workforce centric.
Yeah.
Because you will not get businesses to invest here from outside of Alaska, and quite frankly, you're going to have a hard time getting local businesses to invest more if they can't staff the investment, if they can't put bodies into the need that the business is going to develop for workers. And we're seeing these subtle little shifts that are just really becoming concerning to me. Right now, we've always known that we've got a fair amount of workers that don't live in Anchorage, that live out in the valley. So they're not residents. They don't pay taxes in Anchorage other than the incidental tax for a drink or for stopping at the local pot shop or for buying a gallon of gas. More often as not, those are folks who are making use of our services while they come to work, but they're depositing their paycheck in the valley, and it's going to services in the valley and the economy of the valley more than it is in Anchorage directly. That's about 11% of our jobs in Anchorage are filled by folks who live from the valley. But here's the one that really just surprised the hell out of me. 12% of the jobs in Anchorage are currently being filled by people who don't live in Alaska.
It's a lot.
12%. That,
That is a lot.
Is that like a lot of? Is that just like J1s or
no? These are to a degree. It is the J1 has not been as much of an influence in the last few years as it used to be. But
Right.
this is actually in areas like nursing and healthcare professionals. This is in accounting. This is in engineering. This is in headquarters jobs for the oil companies. And it is a growing trend of non-resident workers filling jobs, non-Alaska resident workers filling jobs in our city. That is very concerning to me because that is a bleed on our economic vitality, because that means those paychecks are not being deposited in local banks and being spent in the local economy.
Yeah, it's not circulating.
And you think that's the emergence of like remote jobs and that kind of stuff?
To a degree,
the availability of those have gone up?
To a degree, it is, but it is actually people physically here doing work too. Right. Shift work in professional fields and even in the construction trades. I mean, we're talking, we've had some, through our research team and myself and Jenna, we've had conversations with any number of design firms and construction firms. And what we're hearing from them is they have no capacity to take on new work, not of any great significance. They have a book of work that is going to carry them for years, just in the projects that they have already under contract or likely under contract. And that's setting aside, for example, the billions of dollars that are coming to Alaska from the transportation bill that everybody was all excited about. But now we're hearing that in all likelihood, most of the projects that those dollars will be paying for will be designed by firms that are not here in Alaska and will be built by contract workers that are brought in the construction trades for the construction season and will not live here. Now we've got an opportunity to cherry pick those guys and try and get a few of them, recruit as much as we can to get them to stay here. But man, we got to up our game.
Yeah.
We are losing statewide. Last year, we lost over 4,000 working age adults from the state, and Anchorage bears kind of the brunt of that. We're down about 15,000 out of the 30,000 working age adults we've lost in the last decade. 15,000 of them are gone from Anchorage. They were here 10 years ago. They are no longer here now. And that is significant. This is why we have such low unemployment right now. Our unemployment rate is still well below 4%. At a couple of points last year, August, September, it dropped to 2.9%. That's just nuts.
Yeah.
The state of Alaska last year in July, I was talking to the commissioner at that time of Department of Labor. They issued in the month of July, statewide, only 3,000 unemployment checks. So it's not people sitting at home playing video games and living off the government dole. And anybody listening to this podcast needs to get over that mindset right away. Yeah. And yet I run into business people and citizens who just are adamant that that's what's going on, and it is not.
Yeah.
It is, we have less of us to do more work, and it's opportunity lost.
Yeah.
Last year we added over 4,000 jobs in the Anchorage economy. This year we're projecting it's going to be just slightly below 1,600 jobs in the Anchorage economy. That's not because the economy is slowing down. That is us taking into account the lack of available bodies to fill the jobs that we could be creating. I mean, right now today, if I could wave a magic wand, I could fill probably close to 6,000 jobs just in the healthcare industry.
I believe that.
If the bodies were available. And people don't understand, that's not doctors and nurses. Those are the kind of the minority of that number. Right. It's janitors, it's food services workers, it's clerical, it's landscapers, it's plumbers and electricians who are working for these healthcare providers, doing the work in their facility, and therefore they're classified as healthcare workers because they're in that industry. Right. They're making that plant go.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of challenge that we're facing, and why we've got to up our game and start to get out there and compete, not just expect people to show up because it's a privilege.
Yeah, I think fortunately for us, we do have like the DOD, and so we do have like influx of military that, like, oh my God, Alaska's amazing. I'm going to stay, which helps. But I mean, I've had family move out in the last year. They're like, it's just a better community. I'm tired of the snow, which is it is what it is with Alaska. But it's I think community mindset, more community focused, and then we have to do something about our schools.
I think schools is the first place, and I will tell
Yeah.
you, I'm excited about what the school district has under development. I just had the privilege of going to Nashville at the invitation of the school district and the Ford Foundation, who they've partnered with, to take a quick, very immersive experience with the Academies of Nashville, which is a middle school, high school level change of the way the education of their community is delivering education to their students. And I could go on and on about this, and I won't, but I'm here to tell you that the Academies of Nashville, that's all you need to Google, but it is basically turning schools into these learning tracks, and everybody picks a particular track. The high school that we looked at had a healthcare, had a research and professional services track, had a engineering track, which included the construction trades, and then had a IT track. And the idea is that the students are put into these tracks where it's exploration, it's opportunity to learn. They visit colleges, they go to job sites, they get internships, the teachers get externships, and they're constantly tapping the business community. How are we doing? Are we meeting your needs? What else can we do? And what they ended up with is the ability for high school students to graduate potentially with an AA degree on the day that they walk out with their diploma. And that if not an AA degree, or they've still got college credit opportunities, and they also walk out with certifications that makes them immediately employable.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Immediately employable, and they are encouraged to pursue it. And they're putting hundreds of skilled workers into the labor force every year out of their 44,000 students in their school district.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, because
We have like the King Career Center and stuff like that. But it's like a micro version.
It's a piece of that.
It's a piece.
And it's somewhat similar, and I will tell you though, but it's got some really interesting things that go on in it. And you're going to hear more about it in the coming weeks and months. The Anchorage School District is setting the stage for launching an academies program with the help of the Ford Foundation here in Anchorage.
That's awesome.
Probably within the next couple of years, it should be starting to go live if everything goes right. That's speculation on my part, but that's the perception that I'm getting with where they are at right now. They've got decisions to make. They've got community conversations to have. It is not putting you on a track just strictly for voc ed.
Right.
It is definitely actually improving odds of being more successful in college for the 35% of our students who are going to go on to some form of degree pursuit. But it's that 65% also that are also being skilled up. So those are some of the things that I think could be a big addition. And it will be a strong partnership between the university system and the Anchorage School District if it's going to be successful.
Very cool.
Because as we work with clients, that tends to be one of the sticking points of concern for most of our clients is schools. So, because obviously they just read what's available on Google, and when you Google Anchorage School District, there's a lot of stuff that pops up that isn't so parent and kid friendly. So, it's how do we change that to make our schools look better? Put a better image out there, so when we do have parents who are either PCSing up or moving up for healthcare or whatever, like how do we paint a better picture with ASD?
That's that vision for the future you're talking about. It's like how do we get people to that place where they can imagine a future in Anchorage for themselves, right? And part of that is that foundation. It's like, are my kids getting what they need? Does my family have what it needs to succeed here?
Right. And like Bill said earlier, what we've said for so many years is, we'll just look at the mountains. Of course, everybody wants to move here. And it's true. We do have great mountains.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the icing on the top of the cake. You still need to have the foundation of a affordable housing market, great schools. And so that's why the Choose Anchorage action plan is really comprehensive and doesn't only focus on quality of place items, because we recognize that it needs to be the entire equation.
Gamut. Yeah. Well, I guess moving on so we're talking about community, talked about school stuff. That sounds absolutely incredible. If we could actually get that done, I think that would be a huge benefit to the labor market.
And we could definitely
Anchorage.
market that,
Yeah.
I know people are moving to Texas for some of the schools that they're making there. So I don't see why they wouldn't do the same thing.
Texas is one of the top 4 states that Alaskans move to. It's California, Texas, Florida, and Arizona.
Oh yeah, I move clients there often.
Yeah. As far as, Anchorage, obviously we kind of concentrate just solely on Anchorage, but a lot of the big corporations are here in Anchorage. A lot of commerce happens here in Anchorage that affects the entire state of Alaska. So as far as a statewide stuff, we just got the project
Willow Project.
Willow Project
Yeah, I
just
wasn't
got
sure if I
announced.
should bring that up or not, but that was a lot of jobs that's projecting.
2,500 for construction.
I think what we're looking at is a period of it won't be on a scale of what we've seen in the past, but it's going to be a very significant amount of investment and job demand resulting from 2 big developments on the North Slope. You've got Willow, which just was in the media today and yesterday as a major project that'll employ over 2,000 construction workers and about 300 operational jobs once it's up and running. And then you've got the Pickup project being done by Santos through its subsidiary Oil Search. That's also another multi-billion-dollar development with a couple of thousand plus construction jobs and 500 operational jobs. And between those 2 projects, it's going to add potentially a couple of 100,000 barrels a day net gain in the amount of oil that we are pushing through the pipeline, which is a benefit to the state treasury on a number of levels, which is going to give us some assets, depending on what the price of oil does, but is going to give us some liquidity and some assets in the coming years that are going to allow us to reinvest in ourselves. If we so choose to reinvest in ourselves, we can do other things with the money, and we've been doing that. That's about as far as I'll go on that topic, but. It's
sticky point there.
It's what are we going to do to invest in the future of our kids?
Right.
What are we going to do to invest in the future of Alaska for future generations? And I think that there is a very significant opportunity with these 2 oil projects coming in, which demonstrates once again that oil is one of the key foundational elements of our state's economy, and will be for at least 2-3 more decades at least. The oil industry is not going to be gone in 10 years. I'm starting to hear that buzz, and I'm sitting there going, that is madness. No, I'm sorry. EVs, yes, they're coming fast and furious. Renewable energy, it's starting to really take off. It's taking up a bigger and bigger share of power generation in the country as a whole and around the world. But we got a long way to go before we don't need oil. And even then, we're going to need oil for manufacturing processes, for consumer goods, for construction materials, for medical supplies and medical products, drugs, many of them which are based in the production of crude oil and natural gas. So I point this out just because it's not going to be what we've seen in the past. It will not be millions of barrels going into the pipeline. But what it will be is a significant resurgence in the dominance of oil as in terms of its share of the broader part of the economy. And that's an opportunity that we need to be thinking about. How do we fully take advantage of this? Because, one day it may not be there as strong as it's about to be. And then what do we do? What have we done with that opportunity, and where are we taking the state as a result with the resources that we develop? And then what else are we developing? Anchorage is blessed. We've got an airport that's generating 1 out of 7 jobs in the city. Crazy as that sounds, direct, indirect, and induced, it is 1 out of 7 jobs.
That's wild.
There's only one other sector that generates more jobs than Anchorage, and that's government, which is 1 out of 5 jobs. Federal, state, local, university, and school district, all combined to make that number. But we've got other sectors. The healthcare sector here in Anchorage is huge. It accounted for 15% of our job growth prior to 2020, in the 15 years prior to that. It is a substantial sector that is currently grossly challenged by lack of staff in any number of things that don't require a 4-year degree, but also in things that require 8, 10, 12 years of higher education. And there's a national shortage of those folks. So, if we want the quality of healthcare that we started to get really used to here in Alaska to continue, what are we going to do to compete to get those workers to come here? What are we going to do to grow our own? when are we going to start to think about maybe we need to go back to some of the old tools that we used to use, where we'll pay for your college if you come back and give us 5 years of service,
Right.
7 years of service, whatever it may be. And that means you're living here, and that means maybe we get you to stay after your 5 or 7 years is done.
Right.
At least it's improving the odds and improving the system.
Well, there's some interesting stuff there, right? So like grow your own is a really strong point, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like when we don't have the skilled folks to take those jobs, what happens is they're imported. And now they're paying them at a higher rate because they're traveling, right? And so it's just a kind of interesting debacle, right?
Well, and then the other thing we're fighting is the generational changes, so getting people to go into these kinds of career fields, we're going to have to show a hell of a lot more intent of having those people here in Alaska in the coming years. And we're going to have to figure out all the incentivization that we can, because generationally, we're going from 78 million baby boomers to 68 million Gen Xers.
Right.
And then 68 million Gen Xers is going to only 72 million millennials. And then 72 million millennials is going to 62 million Gen Z. And
big
the projection curves for population in the United States, as well as here in Alaska, the state of Alaska just released their projections for working age adults in the state for the next 30 years. The mid case is a negative loss of 0.2% per year average over that 30-year period of working age adults. Negative 0.2%. So we're going to have thousands of less working age adults in 30 years than we have today.
Right.
The best case scenario is a 0.5% increase, but that's based on a 3-year period in Alaska that they defined it with, and that's a long shot, and they even
Right.
admit it. And the worst case scenario is that we will lose 150,000 working age adults over the next 30 years. Now, that's the worst case, and I don't think that's what we're going to be dealing with. I hope to God not, because that's going to be pretty disastrous if that were to happen. But even the mid case is not good for our state. It means that we go stagnant.
Yeah.
It means that we are no longer growing, that we are actually declining ever so slightly year after year. It's kind of this slow bleed thing that you
Right.
just don't notice
Yeah.
in terms of energy out of the economy. And we have to notice. We have to pay attention. We have to be intentful that this is not the way we want things to work.
Proactive, rather.
Yeah.
It seems like the conversations that I've been having with a lot of business owners, that is, people are awakening to the fact that change is substantially needed. People are recognizing, they're like, this is just not a trajectory that we can
Right.
be on for much longer. Because, no matter if it's construction, restaurant, just people to fill, like front office admin, they're all competing for the exact same group of people. And so it's like this bounce back and forth, and, who can pay more to get that person there, or whatever, So it's, especially the construction world, they're like, oh, he's on another job site doing this other job because I had a little break in my window, so we kind of gave him to somebody else. But he'll come back in a week or two. You know what I mean? So it's, they're trading guys because there's just not enough people to keep. And then they're in the same, a lot of my tile guys, GCs, they've got jobs lined up for 8 months, 12 months.
They're not taking new work.
Yeah, they won't take new work. They're like, yeah, I'll get to you in 2024, right? And they're like, I can't hire people, quality people to fill.
Yep. That's
So
a very
it's-
common theme.
Yeah.
And so we are left with, I'm sitting in a room, the audience can't, well, they will see this through the video feed, but I am by far the aged demographic in the room. I've got, years left, but not decades left in my future in terms of in the workplace. And, I'm looking at a shift in population where we're going to have a growing larger and larger section of our population that is dependent, that is requiring services, that is in retirement, no longer contributing to the economy, but now relying on the economy for their care, for their well-being, for their, enjoyment of their remaining years, however many, years or decades that may be. And if you don't have the labor force to, staff the assisted living centers
Or the housing for it.
or the housing for it, the types of housing, because seniors need a different kind of housing. In fact, it's amazing how much similar it is to the kind of housing that's being desired by Gen Z and by younger millennials.
Remember that we got that on film because
Yes, absolutely. No, I'm a believer in this, and I believe that we've got there's this lack of tolerance for risk for change that we've got to get over, and we've got to start finding ways to help developers to take those chances and minimize their risk to the degree that we can as a city partner if it generates what we're looking for, which is the housing that we need, and to recognize that it's not always going to be the 5-bedroom, 3,000 square foot with a separate shop, 3-car garage on the hillside with a 1/4 acre of yard. That's the tastes of consumers are changing.
Yeah.
And, I wish I could get a couple of developers and together with the city and to figure out what it's going to take to make pencil developments in downtown that were 400, 500 square foot efficiency apartments that are well appointed, designed well. I think that there is a market out there for those apartments if we can bring them in at the right price point.
Right.
And I think wages are catching up a little bit to that price point, but I think also we have to look at development costs so that the developers aren't, taking as much of a risk as they might otherwise in terms of whether or not their development's going to be successful.
Yeah. And it's nice to see, having just chats with some of the assembly people, and it seems like the planning departments, zoning departments, and all those guys are finally catching up and starting to kind of like, I guess we kind of have been putting a little bit of a negative pressure on development here in Anchorage.
Well, how hard is it
So
is those guys
it's nice to see
get
the change.
variances? How hard would it be? Let's say if somebody wanted to do a development of kind of similar to the housing that we're talking about, right? Something that could be used by seniors and in that same generation, right? That's something we need, arguably. There's definitely a housing shortage. Would the city be willing to partner and do something like that, give somebody a variance to go vertical so they could accommodate that? If the area was right, why wouldn't we be able to make a strong argument for that?
Well, downtown is ready-made for vertical, and I think that the UMed district has opportunities. I think that the university is a prime spot with quite a bit of flat parking lot that is underutilized dirt that could be revenue generators for the university campus. I think it's a discussion that is starting within the university system on how do we monetize and yet in the same hand bring the amenities because we're seeing the pushback on the model of university that we have in terms of the campus setting, that it's more of a commuter campus. It's not it's not the college life experience that a lot of our own kids want, which is why we are seeing a lot of them turn down the free ride scholarships based on their educational attainment in high school and going out of state, even though it's going to cost them an arm and a leg in student loans and other things. And that's, if that doesn't point out that we've got to start thinking about things differently and reinvesting in ourselves to reconfigure our city to attract and retain, what we grow locally, organically, if you will, as well as what we're going to need from outside of Alaska.
Yeah. It's that mindset. I think that brings us right back into just the generations are wanting the experience, more experience, less stuff, like a more comfortable life, more about friends and visiting places and traveling 20 plus countries and, but that's what they're wanting to do. Not put all their hard-earned money into a house payment, or like a vehicle or something like that. So you do have the Instagram life stuff, do it for the gram stuff, but, you definitely see a lot of that movement of, but what they are posting on Instagram and social media is experience stuff.
Right.
It's not as much things. Sure, you get the celebrities and stuff, that's things, fancy cars, all that. But majority of people that are younger, my age and younger, it's a lot of it is what they're doing outside.
Ice skating.
Or
and
hanging with
climbing.
friends or whatever else, and that seems to be the push of what they're wanting. So You know,
I think I'd be remiss if we didn't take this opportunity for me to ask Jenna to plug our social media in some of the things that we're doing
Yeah.
right now.
That's a
That's
great
putting
point.
that right on. That's putting that right on display.
Yeah.
Speaking of Instagram, AEDC has an Instagram page called I Love Anchorage. We recently are putting a lot of effort into it, and we're getting guests every single week. And it's someone new, it's somebody diverse that's different from the guests before. But the idea is they share Anchorage from their perspective, what lens they have on our city. And what's really cool is if you watch this page evolve and you have all these different guests, you can see that, oh, this person owns an ice skating company, and this person is in external affairs for this organization, and this person has children, and these are their favorite parks. And like everybody has a dog, which is great. So we see where all the cool dog parks are, and so much of it is people sharing the places they love to go eat, the places they love to recreate. And Alaska is just such an amazing place to be able to do those things. So if for everyone that's listening, please go follow our Instagram at I Love Anchorage. And if you're interested in hosting, we also have applications on there as well.
awesome. Yeah.
And we're using this as a
follow it.
tool, by the way, nationally, through kind of guerrilla marketing, if you will, to, share the Anchorage experience with people who don't live here, who live outside of Alaska. We've got a fairly large following. If memory serves, I think we're
19.7 thousand.
Oh, that's a lot.
That's
yeah.
pretty
We're
amazing.
pretty proud of it.
Yeah.
and it's a little global in nature too. We've taken a kind of a high level look at who's following us, and the vast majority are of course here in Anchorage, but by far it's interesting. This tool started back in the Live Work Play days, and it had built a following that was somewhat international. We had a fair number of folks from other countries following it, and in the lower 48 we've got a small but feisty and growing audience.
Yeah.
And we're going to be trying to get the word out on that as we get buzz going on it more and more. Right now we're trying to feel like we've got it down pat and got our formulas down. So
Right. And we do have prospective travelers that are following the page and interested to see what Anchorage is all about,
Yeah.
which is really important for the efforts that we're trying to attract workforce to Anchorage, because they say that, travel is the front step to, or the front stoop to the home that is your city. So people travel here, they fall in love, and then hopefully they move their entire family here. That's our goal.
And I think that's an opportunity for me to also talk about some of the partnerships that we're working with our sister organizations here in Anchorage. I mean, Visit Anchorage is by far one of the most successful CVBs I've seen in my cross-country travels, in their ability to use the revenues that they generate, that they are apportioned out of the bed tax, to market the living snot out of Anchorage on a national and international scale, and that is very focused on not only they're now starting to orient quite a bit on the quality of life elements of Anchorage as being a key marketing tool to get people who want to come here. Because when younger generations in particular, but even the boomers, we as travelers, as human beings, we want to know where the people where we're visiting, the citizens of that community, where do they hang out?
Yeah.
I want to see what they live. I want to experience what they're living. And that is a ready-made cross-marketing opportunity for attracting workforce in addition to visitors.
Right.
And so for us, that's we love the partnership that we have with Visit Anchorage. We work with the Chamber of Commerce in that partnership. We work with the Anchorage Downtown Partnership. We work with the Chugach Eagle River Chamber of Commerce, and we work with the Girdwood Alliance in looking at ways that we can expand the knowledge of these different distinct areas of Anchorage. Because we got to remember, we're a big city when it comes to footprint. Our city limits, I think, 1,700 square miles, if I remember correctly.
It's huge.
A lot of it's mountains. I admit that, but you could travel for a couple of hours from one end of the city to the other. From Girdwood up to Chugach Eagle River.
That's a couple of days.
Yeah, and all the things that you can do along that route, and all the things that you can participate in, and all the things that represents in neighborhoods, in centers of activity, in quality of life experience. And for Visit Anchorage to be out there and showing all of that is just a ready-made partnership in terms of attracting workforce. And we look forward to a stronger and stronger relationship with them on that.
it's funny because I mean, how many people have you met? Just I mean, because we have a transient population in Alaska, and people that that just move here either with the military, right, or they just kind of do the touristy stuff and come up for a summer working in tourism, and then be like, man, this is kind of a cool spot, and stay. But I mean, just introduce myself to all these different people. It's funny on how many people have come up, just wanted to vacation, and they're like, this ain't so bad. This is really pretty.
All the time.
All the time.
I have people
Like,
ask for
it's
showings
impressive.
while they're here on vacation.
Yeah. So it's I think that's a very valuable tool, and then they do an amazing job. The Visit Anchorage folks. I heard they're getting a new building.
They are.
They're taking over the old Allure Day Spa building.
Yeah.
It's being remodeled as we speak, and they will be up and running here in the not too distant future. That one's almost done.
That'll be a good new footprint for them. A
Absolutely.
little bit more visible. Yeah.
And they're maintaining the log cabin, and they're maintaining their visitor center at the end of the of their current building. And then if everything works out, I've had my fingers crossed on this. It's not a done deal yet, but their old digs will hopefully become our new downtown library. That's one of the things that I believe the city is working very diligently on
Yeah.
to try and make happen with the generous contribution that was made to the city to establish a downtown library.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that'll be huge. Now as far as as far as the kind of outlook goes, and what do you see being the biggest push that you need to kind of help bring all this together?
Well, boy, early days on that. Jen and I are practically talking about this every day as we try to confab and figure out what we're doing. We've formed a leadership council, or committee, I should say, that has 13 members and is a representation of key business leaders in different age demographics, different industries here in Anchorage, who's our arm's length, kind of, truthing up entity that's going to say you're making progress, you're not making progress, and that will be the ones reporting to the community on how we're doing and whether or not we're being successful in what we've set out to do, and where we are being successful, they will be celebrating. And they will also be key voices in helping us with gathering, community support and the needed assets to get this done. With that, Jenna, you want to talk about the 4 pillars and the management efforts that we're putting together on that?
Sure. I touched on it a little bit earlier, but we've organized the plan into 4 pillars: business vitality, talent, quality of place, and infrastructure. And the management working groups are going to be anywhere between 7 and 9 people that are in charge of each of those pillars and analyzing all of the broad actions as well as the specific strategies that are within those broad actions and prioritizing them from the perspective of, okay, what is the level of effort that we are going to have to invest to accomplish this goal, and then what is the impact that it's going to have on this city. And so subject matter experts within each of those 4 pillars are going to help us organize those and then recruit people that they know of within their field that are able to accomplish some of the goals or put them forward, depending on what it is that we need. So that's how we're organizing the management groups, and that's our next step in the evolution of Choose Anchorage and accomplishing some of the goals.
Awesome. Yeah. And I saw when you guys kind of announced this whole Choose Anchorage thing, the original people that you chose, and I was like, man, that's an awesome panel of people. So
we're excited about it. And then it's going to be getting in, the devil's going to be in the details, and sooner or later there's going to come that moment in time where the city's going to have to make a decision about an investment in something. I don't know what it is yet, but these things don't happen for free.
No.
They don't happen using other people's money. Well, maybe they could. We could. There's potential for grants at the federal level that could, or even at the state level, maybe that could contribute to some of the things that we need to do. But sooner or later, and again, I don't know what this is going to be, but it's going to be something. Then we'll see how much the the citizens of Anchorage, the taxpayers, believe in what is being done and the direction that it's going in. We are going to be reporting to the community at least twice a year at our luncheons on progress, on where we're at, how things are going, what we're observing, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, where are the successes, and where are the things that we haven't quite succeeded on yet. Because this is going to be all about keeping the community informed and giving the community ownership of this initiative. AEDC put the paper together. AEDC put the plan together in partnership with our consultants and with the community that helped us, in the interviews and in the participation in the steering group and the board of directors and the partner organizations who all contributed to this plan. But where the rubber hits the road is whether or not we're being successful, of course, but also whether or not the community believes that change is needed and that they're willing to invest in that change, in those upgrades, in those remediations, and whatever it may be that we're going to have to do to get our community in a position. I personally think that education is going to be our first major step of significance that's going to require potentially some investment. We'll have to see. But most definitely is going to require broad-based community support. It's going to be different. It's going to be, but I've seen it. I've seen the kids in a high school of 2,000 kids in Nashville going through this program. And sure, there's a couple of kids who were, got their heads down on their desk and they are pretty much checked out.
Right.
But the amount of enthusiasm, the amount of engagement, the amount of poise and leaning in that I saw in literally, and the camaraderie of these students supporting each other and really focused on what they were trying to accomplish. And the ones that were still even learning, what is it that I want to do? I don't know yet. That was a great answer. And, at least they were honest with themselves.
Right.
But they said, but I asked them, are you getting out of this program what you need so that you feel like you're going to come to an answer? They said, absolutely. Without fail. I mean, I ran into that with every kid who told me, I don't know what I want to be yet, what I want to pursue. But this, I feel like I've got everything around me that's going to help me to get to that point. Whether it's college or a certification or a trade skill or whatever it may be.
That's huge. I think, because at the end of the day, really education and all that stuff is to get people ready for adulting. Like college, and then, once out of high school, you're kind of moving into the workforce or going to college or entering trade schools or something, right? So school should be not just like, math, reading, writing, but also some life skills attached to it. And I feel like, schools have kind of gotten away from that over the years, and so it's nice to kind of hear about schools kind of pushing things back into that because it's needed,
And this Academies program is popping up in cities all over the United States. I mean, we were there with 3 other communities, one from Arkansas, one from Michigan, and then from Memphis, which was also looking at establishing their Academies program. And, Anchorage is further along in the process. The Ford Foundation has been doing this at no expense to the Anchorage School District in terms of making these things happen. They've been contributing all of the help. They've been providing all of the training. The cost to the school district has been relatively minimal compared to what they've been getting out of the help from the Ford Foundation in getting this program going. Nashville's now in year 15 of their Academies program. And they're putting a lot of kids to work right out of the gate. The business community, I spoke to the Chamber of Commerce folks from Nashville. I spoke to other business organizations and businesses that I happened to have the opportunity to interact with. Without fail, they were all so enthusiastic about what the Academies program has done for their labor force issues in Nashville. And this is a metropolitan statistical area of about 2 million people.
Right.
And prior to this Academies program, they had a demonstrably poorer quality of workforce in their community. And now today, they truly believe in what the Nashville School District is doing in that community. And Nashville School District only covers a population of 750,000. But to have even the Memphis Chamber of Commerce telling me what they're hearing from their employers about wanting this Academies program, that's why they were there.
That's awesome. It's
pretty
you have
powerful.
so much buy-in too, from the business community, well, just the community in general, and then of course, from other communities,
Yeah.
buying in on that.
Yep.
It's like
What the, you know,
we look
so-
back and it all comes back to engagement. Like, we have to, as a community, believe that these things are important and get behind it.
I think my most frustrating moment is if we move down this path of the Choose Anchorage plan and we hit a barrier and I see all the opportunity that is on the other side of that barrier and we can't overcome it. And for me, that can't stand.
Right.
We have got to come together as a community because, like I say, this year we're projecting a little less than 1,600 jobs added. Should have been more like 4,000.
Yeah.
At least. And in coming years, I think that we're going to continue to have this headwind of against growth that is going to become harder and harder to overcome unless we start to realize that we've got a lot of great assets to work with, but we need to do some backfill and some expansion and some redevelopment. And then we also have to adopt some new ways of thinking and some new lines of investment to get Anchorage poised to be incredibly successful for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. If we can get this workforce issue figured out by making our city more attractive to non-resident workers, to get them to move here and to become residents, I think that we start to move towards more of a critical mass where we can start to self-sustain ourselves, in a few decades. And not, we need about 1.5 million people in the state to be a truly self-sustaining economy.
Yeah.
I don't know that I will see that in my grandchildren's lifetime, but I think we can improve our odds for being less susceptible to these kinds of challenges in the future if we just set our mind to it. And I think we can.
I think we can too. I think, the conversations I've been having is people are, like I said before, people are seeing the need for change, which is, I think part of that is the mindset switch of buying into the fact that we need change because change is hard.
Right.
Yes, it is.
And so understanding that we need the change was, I think, the big switch that a lot of people needed. You guys have done an excellent job of kind of describing why we need the change and kind of selling that, and then not just creating the fact that we need the change, but also a solution moving forward, which helps people kind of switch that little part in their brain. So,
Well, I think we should definitely tell the audience how to learn more about the Choose Anchorage campaign. So I'm gonna
that'd be fantastic.
Where would we go to find more info about that?
Yeah.
So there are 2 reports on our website at www.aedcweb.com. There's an executive summary, which gives you the high-level details of the plan, and then there's a 50-plus page research report that you can dive into if you really want all of the details that went behind the plan. And then in addition to that, we also have an interactive data tool on our website using Tableau, which will display all of the data that was used to come to the conclusions within the plan, and it will allow you to put your own filters on it, look at different parameters, and kind of make the data tell the story that you're looking for.
Right.
So we have all 3 of those things on our website. And then as we are forming these management groups, we're certainly going to be needing folks to get involved as well. So if you're interested in getting involved, you can email info@aedcweb.com.
I think it's also important to note that we made quite a buzz with Roger Brooks when he was in town, who was our destination development consultant. And Roger was looking, the Choose Anchorage plan was done more from a data-driven and experiential perspective from the great team that we had from TIP Strategies, which was our research firm, nationally prominent, working with literally dozens and dozens and dozens of communities across the country facing similar challenges to ours. Roger was brought in more as kind of the qualitative view. He came in looking at Anchorage from the point of view of a visitor who's never been here before, a potential worker who's thinking about moving here for work, or a potential investor thinking about investing here. And how does our city appear to them?
Right.
And Roger's findings are on the website also. You can see his full-blown presentation of his findings and his overview. And he talks about the amazing amount of assets that we have inside our city limits. You don't need to go to what's the old joke? Anchorage is 20 minutes away from Alaska.
Right.
But he truly believed that Anchorage represented Alaska in a lot of different ways. It's just that we don't do a very good job of helping strangers to find those assets.
Yes.
And so wayfinding, definition of districts, quality of downtown, other assets around the city that he felt needed some attention. So that's another element to this, and all of that is incorporated into the into the Choose Anchorage plan. But it just adds another kind of a layer of another set of perspectives that mesh very nicely with what we've got in the Choose Anchorage plan that we're trying to accomplish. So it's about hard number things that we need to address, and it's also about qualitative things that we need to address. The things that are kind of that color around the numbers, if you will, that makes Anchorage so damn special. It's just that we don't do a very good job of showing that to people who don't live here.
Right.
We all know it.
We all
live
know
here,
it. Right.
Except for those who decide to leave. But that's I think we got to just if we start getting our head around the fact that if we can just share that love we have for Anchorage with people in different ways, and to provide them with the experience, and then to provide them with the reasons to actually physically commit to Anchorage, we're going to have some success like nobody's business. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, I think so as well. As we kind of wrap up here, we're just a little bit above our hour mark. Anything you guys want to conclude with or finalize with?
Well, I think that the airport, if I were to touch on one thing that just gives me a whole bunch of faith in the future besides the oil and gas sector's upcoming boom, is the airport. And it is, we've got significant hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of investment looking to deploy at the airport. We've got the Northlink project, which is very close to committing to construction. We've got the cool supply chain facility that's working its way towards being a sanctioned project that could be a huge asset to the airport. FedEx has got their in-state hub facility, which will also expand their ability by making room in their existing facility for more international cargo. And then we've just, then we've got Northern Pacific trying to get, direct passenger routes to Korea and Japan, as well as then using Anchorage as a hub to then connect those passengers to the lower 48 or to Alaska. Lot of things going on around the airport, and it is a diversifier that is significant in its job growth. It's the one sector of our economy that is now above where it was at in employment prior to COVID. That's awesome. It has recovered all of the COVID losses and the recession losses, and is now a rock solid, foundation of job growth in Anchorage. I just can't extol the virtues of the airport enough in terms of what it has done for the economy to make us a little more resilient in the face of challenging times. And so we just need to keep an eye on that. Beyond that, I just would close with saying, I'm a passionate believer in the future of Anchorage. I tell a lot of bad news, and I get chided for the fact that I'm being a little negative, but I am a firm believer that I'm not being negative, I'm being truthful.
Honest, yeah.
And honesty is how we are going to find our way to success.
Yeah.
Honesty with ourselves and honesty with each other. And in that honesty, we are going to find the paths that we need to go down to get Anchorage on a footing of significant success and new growth in the coming decades.
Yeah.
But I will always extol the things that are wonderful about our city, but I will never be shy about telling my fellow citizens what it is that we need to do to make our city better if we are going to be successful in the future.
Yeah.
And if that's being a little negative Nancy, well, then I guess I'm being a little negative Nancy. But you know what? It is because it is grounded in the fact that truth will definitely set us on a path to greater success if we recognize what the challenges are in full detail and overcome them.
I fully agree. Got to realize the problems to create solutions, right?
Yeah, and then Jenna has to hear me talk about this all the time, so she's being
Jenna gets to
Yes.
hear him talk about it all the time.
Yeah. She's very kind. But we've got a great staff at AEDC, a tremendous group of 4. My 3 team members are motivated. They want to get things done. We're working to grow our team. We're looking to get the resources together. That's our job to go out and earn. So that we can get our staff up to full fighting weight of 6 to 8 people, so that we can get out and get even more done, and especially to advance the Choose Anchorage plan. So if you want to learn more about AEDC and you want to learn about how you can support us in that effort, aedcweb.com, or I'm a real easy guy to hunt down, and I'll be happy to have a conversation with anybody who wants to talk to me.
Love it. Jenna?
I think Bill's optimism for the future is a perfect place to end it. So thank you so much for having us. This was really fun.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Justin
Thanks
and
for
Billy.
coming on. Thanks again for taking time out of your guys' busy day. I know it's tough out there. So thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation.
Yes, thank you so much.
You bet.
Thanks, guys.